And today our topic is management of angle closure glaucoma, a strategic approach. Before we start, I want to thank our MOSCON organizers, Dr. Ragini Parikh, Dr. Sumit and Dr. Parikshit Gopte, for giving us this opportunity to present our EC on angle closure glaucoma. And now I would like to invite our speakers, Dr. Vidya Chellekar, Dr. Prachi, and Dr. Arati, and myself. And without wasting our time, I would like to invite Prachi, Dr. Prachi, to give a talk on spectrum of angle closure disease.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'll share my slides. We'll start. The spectrum of angle closure glaucoma. So what is significance of glaucoma? Many people fear blindness more than death. Glaucoma is the single largest cause of irreversible blindness in the world. Half of all cases blinded by glaucoma are affected by primary angle closure. What is the prevalence of angle closure glaucoma in India? In the Velo study, they found the prevalence of PACG was 4.3% among people aged between 30 to 60 years of age. All the PACG cases detected were of the chronic type, making PACG about 5 times as common as POH. In India, PACG is common, the asymptomatic type. So what is angle closure glaucoma? It is a glaucomatous optic neuropathy caused by direct consequences of elevated IOP caused by physical obstruction of aqueous outflow or degenerative changes in the trabecular meshwork resulting from the iridotrabecular contact. So it can be primary, which is anatomical, or it could be secondary, mainly because of pathological causes. Traditionally, it was classified as acute, where there was sudden rise of intraocular pressure, subacute or intermittent, when there is sudden IOP elevation that is spontaneously aborted, so that the symptoms are mild or even absent. Chronic was chronic IOP elevation due to presence of pus. Latent is evidence that the angles are open but narrow angle and does close under certain circumstances. Nowadays, we follow the Rich classification, which is the primary angle closure suspect, in which on gonioscopy, there is iridotrabecular meshwork contact with normal optic disc, normal visual fields, normal IOP, no pus, no symptoms. Primary angle closure is iridotrabecular ITC contact is present, either raised IOP, pus, or typical symptoms. Primary angle closure glaucoma is you see an iridotrabecular meshwork contact, glaucomatous changes in the optic nerve, as well as visual field changes. Based on the anatomical level of obstruction, it can be at the level of iris, the ciliary body, lens, or any vector which is posterior to the lens. Coming to the iris causes, it could be a pupillary block or a non-pupillary block, which could be a thick peripheral iris too. The secondary causes of pupillary block are contraction of fibrovascular membrane in NVG, contraction of fibrin in the angle due to anterior uveitis or hypema, endothelial proliferation, and epithelial downgrowth. Causes of because of the ciliary body, there's a condition called as plateau iris configuration, where there's forward rotation of the ciliary body or the anterior portion of the ciliary process. Here on the picture on the left, you can see the ciliary process, the body pushing the iris forward. Even if a laser PI is done in such cases, the angle won't open because the ciliary body is pushing the iris into the angles. Pseudoplateau iris syndrome is a presence of cyst which is pushing the iris into the angles. Coming to the lens, it is phacomorphic glaucoma, or it could be a phacotopic, where it is anterior position lens, or it's a subluxated lens due to pseudoexfoliation syndrome or traumatic. Nowadays, we consider lens wall thickness as an important predictor in the lens cause of angle closure glaucoma. So what is a lens wall? It is defined as the perpendicular distance between the horizontal lines joining the two scleral spur and the anterior pole of the crystalline lens, which represents the anterior portion of the lens. An increased lens wall thickness indicates an increased lens thickness or a bulk anterior to the scleral spur, increasing the risk of angle closure. So it's the scleral spur, a line, horizontal line joining the two scleral spur and a perpendicular line to the scleral spur. And the distance between the anterior portion of the lens and the scleral spur is the lens point. So it is said that it is exaggerated when the lens wall is more than 1/3 distance between the corneal endothelium and a line drawn to connect the nasal and temporal scleral spurs. What are the vectors posterior to the lens? It could be aqueous misdirection, serous or a hemorrhagic choroidal detachment or occlusion, space-occupying lesions, or a retrolenticular tissue contraction, mainly seen in ROPs, or persistently hypoplastic primary vitreous. So what is the mechanism causing this IT contact? So there is iridolenticular contact, which limits the flow of aqueous from posterior to anterior. A pressure gradient is created between the posterior segment and the anterior segment. It pushes the iris further and it leads to an iridotrabecular contact. So it's in a narrow angle, but it is open. But in a dim light, when the pupil mid-dilated, it closes the angle. It is seen in the picture on the right. So non-pupillary block is mainly because of a presence of a thick peripheral iris root. So when the pupil dilates, this peripheral iris bunches up and opposes the trabecular meshwork, causing a non-pupillary block. Other syndrome is a plateau iris syndrome, in which there is anterior rotation of ciliary processes or anteriorly positioned ciliary process. The peripheral iris is thus forced into angle and causing the iridotrabecular touch. So as a result, a patent PI won't relieve a iridotrabecular touch in a plateau iris syndrome. In aqueous misdirection syndrome or a malignant glaucoma, there is anterior rotation of ciliary processes, opposition to the lens and equator, and anterior displacement of lens iris diaphragm, causing a rise in intraocular pressure. When coming to clinical diagnosis of an angle closure, is a procedure where you see the corneal thickness and the anterior chamber depth. A grade 2, lesser than grade 2 and grade 1 angles are more prone for closed angles. There's a modified von Herix, which is the expression of percentage to of the thickness of the adjacent cornea. It is from 0 to 100%. Gonioscopy is the most important thing for angle closure glaucoma. Must be done in all glaucoma suspect. It is to see whether the angle is occludable. The prerequisite is a dark room, a small beam of light, and not crossing the pupil, because it should not constrict the pupil and open the angles. So the question is the angle occludable? Occludable angles are one in which the posterior pigmented trabecular meshwork is not visible more than 270 degrees or more, without indentation or manipulation. So what is indentation? It is done with a 4-mirror lenses which do not void the cornea, and the central corneal compression is done. What does it do is it opens the closed angle if the closure is oppositional. So if it opens, the trabecular meshwork opens on indentation, it is oppositional. Angle closure attack may be broken by this maneuver, and laser iridectomy may lead to normal pressure in contrast to synachial closure, which ultimately requires a trabeculectomy. Manipulation gonioscopy is asking the patient to look in the mirror, and overhill or dive bomber's view is seen. The big question is the definition applicable to clinical practice? Pass in the superior angle are the most important or pathognomic of the angle closure in absence of inflammation. Patchy pigmentation on the trabecular meshwork in the superior angle is also suggestive of angle closure. And the narrow angle may be seen to close and open, demonstrating closure of the angle, that is on and off side. Just a recap, if you see a scleral spur or a posterior trabecular meshwork, it is open. If it is not seen, do indentation. There is no synechia, no IOP rise, it is PACS. If there is synechia, it is PSEG. No synechia, raised IOP, it is primary angle closure. Just a quick findings which you can see in angle closure glaucoma or a primary angle closure is the presence of a broad-based synechia, which are broad compared to iris processes, and they don't follow the contour of the angle. In the plateau iris syndrome, if you notice, the iris is like all over the top view, but if you indent, you can notice the iris is covering the peripheral, it's covering the trabecular meshwork. Clinical features of angle closure are blurred vision and acute angle closure, edema, and oval pupil. There could be a glaucoma flecking, and iris swelling can be seen in chronic cases. Summary of my topic today. PSEG is more visually destructive form of disease than primary open angle. Ocular biometric risk factors are thicker lens, more anteriorly positioned lens, a shorter axial length, all acting to form a shallower anterior chamber. Most angle closure is asymptomatic. Classification should identify the mechanism responsible for angle closure and the state of the disease, and thus help in diagnosis and prognosis. Gonioscopy is must in all cases. ASOCT would aid in diagnosis. From the research point of view, we don't have prevalence studies from the state of Maharashtra about the prevalence of occludable angles. I thank you all my colleagues and for giving me the opportunity. The most important question today is who will win the match of T20. So I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prachi. In short time, you have covered the spectrum of angle closure. Thank you once again for a nice talk. I would like to invite Dr. Vidya Chelekar to talk about the imaging in angle closure glaucoma.
Yes. Allow, no? 1 second, I'm sharing the screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am, we can see your screen.
Yes. So good afternoon, everyone. I thank MOSCON for accepting our IC and allowing us to present the IC today. And I also thank my chief instructor, Dr. Kalyani, for giving me an opportunity to present my talk. I will be talking on the role of imaging in angle closure disease. So Dr. Prachi has very clearly and very briefly elaborated all the various stages of angle closure glaucoma and the various forms of angle closure disease. So for primary angle closure glaucoma, there are certain biometric features that predispose to angle closure, such as shorter axial length, a shallow anterior chamber, a greater lens thickness in relation to the axial length, and also the relative lens position in relation to the axial length, a smaller corneal diameter, a steeper corneal radius, and these eyes are usually hypermetropic. So anterior segment evaluation is the most important part for evaluation of an angle closure disease. So the slit lamp examination helps us in examination of the cornea, the anterior chamber angle, anterior chamber, the lens and the angle. But it is not possible to look for a pathology behind the iris. Also, it cannot assess the iris thickness or the relative lens position in relation to the axial length. The other important examination or investigation that is usually performed in angle closure disease is the A-scan biometry, which can help us to know the axial length of that particular eye and also gives us a measurement of the anterior chamber depth as well as the lens thickness. So as Dr. Prachi was also saying, so the axial length, the lens thickness and some other parameters, they play a very important role in the pathogenesis of angle closure attack. But because these cannot be assessed by clinical examination, we need to depend on certain other investigative methodologies that we will discuss now. So gonioscopy is the gold standard for examination in angle closure glaucoma, and that also
I'm sorry, Vidya, I'm sorry for the interruption. Your slides are not moving. So maybe you can put the presentation on the slide mode and try again.
Yeah, I will try. One second. And yeah, can you see now?
Yes, ma'am. They seems to be moving now. You can just put it on the slide mode.
Yes. This is okay. This mode is okay.
Slideshow,
you mean?
Slideshow, I mean.
Yeah, I had put it on slideshow. Then you said you were not able to see.
No, the slides were not moving. So your first slide was still displayed. So it's okay now.
I will try once again slideshow. Can you see now? Are they moving?
Ma'am, you can start talking. Then if anything, then we'll let you know, ma'am.
No, sorry for the interruption. The next slides, is it moving?
Yeah, right now your slide displayed is anterior segment evaluation slide.
No. That's over. This is done. Now this is the next slide, gonioscopy. I'm talking on gonioscopy now.
That slide is not yet visible.
I will. I think if this
Yes.
is visible, I will continue with this.
Yes, yes. Now it's visible.
Yeah, let us continue and for
Yes.
present. Yeah, I had just spoken about the anterior segment evaluation. So, slit lamp and A-scan biometry are the two techniques for anterior segment evaluation. Gonioscopy is the gold standard technique for differentiating an open angle and a closed angle glaucoma. That's a very, very important test to differentiate and group them into two main groups of glaucoma. However, this technique is subjective. So there are certain new imaging modalities that are available now, like the ASOCT and the ultrasound biomicroscopy, which are objective measurements for the measurement of or for the visualization as well as measurement of structures of the anterior segment. So, and they also provide us with some objective measurements that can be helpful, as we can see later. So the anterior segment OCT works on the principle of Michelson's interferometry. We will not go into the details of the technique. So this high-speed imaging helps us in various ways. Most important that it is a non-contact technique and quite easy for the patient, unlike gonioscopy. And there can be also that the clinicians who are not very well, performing gonioscopy routinely may find gonioscopy a little difficult as a technique. But ASOCT is very friendly, very non-contact, and very easy for the patient. So quite easy for the examiner to use it, and it reduces the examination time, eliminates motion artifacts. And another important thing is that it enables imaging of dynamic ocular events and allows for a rapid survey of a large area of the anterior segment. There are various applications of ASOCT in glaucoma. Just to enumerate, so this helps us to study the normal anatomy of the anterior chamber as well as the angle, and it's a very important screening tool or a diagnostic tool for the evaluation of the varied spectrum of angle closure glaucoma. It can also help us to study the plateau iris syndrome, the pathology behind the plateau iris syndrome, to study the mechanism of malignant glaucoma, to see the efficacy of laser peripheral iridotomy, and also to test the patency of the glaucoma drainage device and help in evaluation of the bleb morphology. Although there are so many applications of ASOCT in glaucoma, my talk today will be restricted to its application in the angle anatomy or the angle closure disease. Apart from glaucoma, it also has a very important role in the diagnosis of corneal diseases. Uh, just to know what are the differences between UBM and ASOCT, just I wanted to highlight only one or two points, that the resolution or the depth of penetration between the two techniques is different. As you can see here, the resolution is 25 microns. Here it is 18 microns. The depth of imaging of UBM allows us to image the or examine the retroiridal structures like the ciliary body, zonules, pars plana, and sometimes even the peripheral retina. But the ASOCT is restricted to the anterior segment alone directly, the iris and the lens, but it cannot image the retroiridal structures. UBM can be a little uncomfortable to the patient because of the technique itself, while the ASOCT is very, very comfortable to the patient, as well as it's a very fast technique. So this is broadly the ASOCT image of the anterior segment. So we can see all the structures of the angle anterior segment, the cornea, the anterior chamber, the iris on both the sides, the angle, as well as the anterior lens surface. So one important thing that we must remember when we are examining the ASOCT image is to identify the scleral spur. So the scleral spur is the landmark which helps us to identify as well as measure the various structures of the anterior segment. So there are various measurement tools available in the ASOCT machine, like the calipers, which is very most commonly used. And so the various parameters that can be measured on ASOCT are the angle opening distance. So I will be explaining more again later. The angle opening distance, the trabecular iris space area, the anterior chamber depth, the anterior chamber area, the lens vault, and the central corneal thickness. So the anterior angle opening distance, angle opening depth is here, as you can see here. The distance between the posterior corneal surface and the anterior iris surface on a line perpendicular to the trabecular meshwork at 500 microns from the scleral spur. So this can be measured at 500 microns as well as at 750 microns from the scleral spur. The second important parameter is the trabecular iris space area. As you can see here, this trapezoid area between the posterior corneal surface and the anterior iris surface. So this is the trabecular iris space area at 500 microns, and this squared checkered area is the same area but at 750 microns. So those will have some other significance. We will talk about it later. So the anterior chamber depth, as you all know, so this is the depth between the posterior corneal surface and the anterior lens surface, and central corneal thickness also can be measured. So this is the most important or a new parameter that has come has gained lot of significance now. So the lens vault is basically the the vaulting of the anterior surface of the lens, which can lead to angle closure because of the position, because of that narrowing of the angle and the anterior chamber. So this lens vault can play an important role in the pathogenesis of angle closure. So basically, here we measure the the scleral spur on the right and the nasal and temporal areas. A line is drawn between the two, and the area, the line, the perpendicular distance from this line to the anterior lens surface. So this is known as the lens vault. The more steeper the lens, the more is the lens vault and more is the risk for angle closure. So there have been several studies that have been conducted elsewhere, which have studied the anterior segment OCT parameters in the various subtypes of angle closure glaucoma. And in this study, it was found that the eyes with primary angle closure had the narrowest angles, the smallest anterior segment dimensions, thickest iris, largest lens vault, compared with the other groups of angle closure, like the suspect group, the primary angle closure, and chronic angle closure glaucoma. So the lens vault, the trabecular iris space area at 750 microns, and the iris thickness at 750 microns were the major determinants of acute angle closure. Another study also found the similar results. Again, they found that the AOD, the angle opening distance, the trabecular iris space area, the anterior chamber depth, and lens positions were all less, and the lens thickness and lens vault were greater in the eyes with angle closure glaucoma than in open angle glaucoma. So, and the lens vault was highest in the acute angle closure group. So we conducted a study at HV Desai Hospital. So we had a similar study. We had 200 eyes of angle closure disease, and they were classified into 4 groups: angle closure suspects, primary angle closure glaucoma, that's a chronic stage of glaucoma, and acute angle closure glaucoma. So all these eyes underwent clinical examination as well as ASOCT and IOL master examination. So we found that the eyes with acute primary angle closure had the narrowest angles, thickest iris, and largest lens vault. And it was concluded that iris thickness is 750 microns from the scleral spur and lens vault are important variables that were associated with acute angle closure, and they may play a role in acute primary angle closure, acute angle closure glaucoma, the pathogenesis of this stage of the disease. So thus, ASOCT may help us to identify that eyes that are at higher risk of acute angle closure and plan the treatment accordingly. And lens vault measurement may help to decide which eyes could benefit by early cataract extraction, thus preventing them from going on to the chronic stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Vidya ma'am. Thank you for your nice elaboration of anterior segment OCT and the diagnostic importance of various anatomical structures by imaging to diagnose the glaucoma, angle closure glaucoma. Thank you, ma'am. Now I invite Dr. Arati to give her talk on iridotomy.
Good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, I would like to thank Team Moss and Dr. Kalyani for this wonderful opportunity. Laser peripheral iridotomy, also described as laser iridotomy or simply termed iridotomy, is a procedure which uses a laser device to create a hole in the iris. thereby allowing aqueous humor to traverse directly from the posterior to the anterior chamber and consequently relieve a pupillary block. The first report of an effective surgical treatment for glaucoma was made in 1857 by the German ophthalmologist von Graefe, who described the execution of a broad sector surgical iridectomy through a corneal wound. In the mid-1970s, argon laser became the first to be routinely used to perform a non-invasive iridotomy. Although it is well absorbed by iris pigment, argon laser iridotomy alone was associated with some complications and relatively high failure and subsequent closure rates. Q-switch anti-YAG laser devices surfaced in the 1980s and demonstrated to be effective in light-colored iris because its mechanism of action was independent of the melanin content of the iris. Furthermore, it required considerably less total energy than pure argon laser iridotomy, achieved a superior rate of single treatment success with lower risk of subsequent closure, and was likely to cause a damage to the cornea, lens, and retina. So there can be various indications of doing laser PI, like acute primary angle closure, contralateral eye in APAC, primary angle closure suspect, narrow or occludable angle, primary angle closure and primary angle closure glaucoma, secondary angle closure with pupillary block, platyoiris configuration and platyoiris syndrome, aqueous misdirection, ciliolenticular block, ciliary block, or malignant glaucoma. Ocular media opacities, for example, corneal edema, anterior chamber inflammation, high-risk eyes, example, very shallow or flat anterior chamber uveitis, uncooperative patients should be managed prior to performing a laser PI. In order to safely and effectively perform a laser PI, few recommendations need to be followed. Apply pilocarpine 2% to 4% to cause a meiosis, reduce iris thickness, and facilitate perforation. In the presence of corneal edema, use topical glycerin 10% if available, systemic acetazolamide, intravenous mannitol, or oral hyperosmotic agents. To prevent IOP spikes after the procedure, use topical alphagonist like brimonidine 1 hour prior to procedure and immediately afterwards. In the setting of acute angle closure, IOP should be controlled beforehand with medical treatment. Apply topical anesthesia. Apply iridotomy lens to the eye with coupling agent. The use of the lens keeps the eyelids open, minimizes eye movement, provides magnification, and improves visualization, reducing the risk of corneal burns, and subsequently increases the power density by concentrating the laser energy. Set defocus to 0. Focus first on the iris surface and then offset the YAG beam so that it converges slightly posteriorly in the stroma. The hole should be created in the iris periphery, aiming for an iris crypt or area of iris thinning at a site in the superior quadrants between 11 to 1 o'clock, which allows the lesion to be covered by upper eyelid, avoiding the 12 o'clock position as air bubbles may occlude the iridotomy. It's better to avoid iris vessels. A small, let's say 150 to 200 micron, peripheral and completely patent is the ideal iridotomy. Whole thickness perforation of the iris is assumed when pigment mixed with aqueous flows from the posterior into the anterior chamber. Once a full thickness hole has been made, it should be enlarged horizontally to achieve an adequate size. Iridotomy size should be sufficient for patency in spite of iris edema, pigment epithelial proliferation, and pupil dilatation. Transillumination through iridotomy is not a reliable indicator of patency. Prescribe a topical corticosteroid 3 to 4 times a day for 4 to 7 days, as well as IOP-lowering drugs. Evaluate intraocular pressure in 30 minutes to 2 hours following laser PI and anterior chamber depth 1 week later to confirm opening of the angles. Iridotomy can be accomplished using photodisruptive Q-switched anti-YAG laser or photothermal argon laser and solid-state lasers. The two lasers type may also be used in sequential combination. Laser parameters should be individualized to each patient and adjusted appropriately during the procedure. Independently of the device used, some authors aim for an iridotomy of at least 200 microns in size and ideally 500 microns in diameter. ND-YAG laser is preferred by many surgeons because it perforates the iris easily, requiring low energy. ND-YAG iridotomies may be less likely to close over time. Various complications have been reported following laser PI. Transient increase in intraocular pressure is the most common postoperative complication. It is usually transient, occurring most frequently in first 4 hours after treatment. Prophylaxis with pressure-lowering agents is an effective strategy to prevent IOP rise after the procedure. Hyphema is minor in most cases and can usually stop by applying the light pressure to the eye with contact lens. Visual symptoms are uncommon but known to occur after the procedure, which includes blurring, glares, halos, lines, spots, and shadows at a reported rate of 2% to 16%. The risk of traumatic cataract has been reported to be increased in post-PI subjects at follow-up periods ranging from 12 months to 6 years, and case reports of posterior subcapsular cataracts after laser PI may be found in the literature. Closure of the iridotomy have been reported to occur at a rate of 1% at 2 weeks to 20% within the first 6 months after the procedure. But the vast majority of iridotomies may remain patent years after the procedure. In rare cases, aqueous misdirection can complicate the management of primary angle closure. Other complications reported include a reduction in endothelial cell count, post-operative inflammation, sterile hypopyon, cystoid macular edema, and retinal hemorrhages. So to conclude, laser PI is an integral component in the management of primary angle closure. Laser PI increases angle width in all stages of primary angle closure and has a favorable effect on IOP in eyes without extensive angle or disc damage. Although there is a gradual decrease in angle width in primary angle closure suspect eyes after laser PI, further treatment after PI in this subgroup is infrequent. In contrast, additional treatment after laser PI is more likely in primary angle closure, acute primary angle closure, and primary angle closure glaucoma eyes, and they should be monitored for IOP elevation and progression to glaucoma. So thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you, Aarti. Thank you for detailed laser procedure and all the complications and management. And few questions maybe later after all the talks, we can have the discussion.
Sure.
Okay. So now my topic on surgical management of the angle closure glaucoma. So what are the management goals for the angle closure glaucoma? As Aarti said, the laser iridotomy is the initial treatment modality for the angle closure glaucoma. And after that, how to proceed with the angle closure disease. The treatment goals are to reverse or to prevent the angle closure process and to control the intraocular pressure and to prevent the damage to the optic nerve further. So how to go about with this? And when we diagnose the primary angle closure glaucoma, first we need to do peripheral iridotomy or argon laser peripheral iridoplasty. If the patients are having cataract, if after PI, if the IOP is under control, then we can go with the phacoemulsification. If it is medically uncontrolled, either we can go with the phacoemulsification or combined with the phacotrabeculectomy. Depends on the other factors. If the patient is not having cataract, medically controlled, then we can continue with the medications and treat as an open angle glaucoma. If the IOP is not under control, then we can think about phacoemulsification or the trabeculectomy, depending on the ocular disorder and the disc damage and IOP. Primary angle closure glaucoma with age-related cataract, how to go about it? Early visual field defects, then only we can do the phacoemulsification. Moderate defects also we can go with the phacoemulsification if the IOP is under control. But if the damage is more and the IOP is more, it is better to go for the phacotrabeculectomy, because we cannot do 2 surgeries in the different time. The time gap may increase the damage further. And as she discussed in detail the role of laser iridotomy, I may not go about it, but only like it will help to break the angle closure attack and re-establishes the aqueous flow from the posterior chamber to the anterior chamber. Then coming to the trabeculectomy in PACG, when to go about it? When we are treating it after laser iridotomy, if our target pressure is not reached, despite our medical management, maximum medical management, and progression, even though we reach the target IOP, if the still progression of the glaucomatous damage, then we can opt for trabeculectomy. When the patients are allergic to the medications and they are unable to tolerate, then we can think of trabeculectomy. Non-compliant patients and non-affordable patients, we can think of surgical treatment. Some precautions we need to take before going for the surgical modality of treatment. Initially, we have to achieve a good IOP control with the topical medication as well as systemic anti-glaucoma medication. It is better to discontinue pilocarpine to prevent further shallowing of the anterior chamber and chances of malignant glaucoma. And we need to use judicious peribulbar block and adequate ocular massage to control the IOP. And we need to take care of one thing, that specular microscopy, to know the corneal status, because most of the angle closure attacks, they present with the corneal edema and the corneal decompensation. So better to know about the corneal status and plan for the surgery. And after surgery, the IOL formulation. As most of these eyes are hyperopics, we need to calculate the IOL power very cautiously. The Hoffer Q Holiday and Barrett Universal 2, they are the better IOL formulas to be applied. What are the intraoperative precautions we need to take? Slow AC decompression to reduce the risk of malignant glaucoma. Liberal use of high molecular weight viscoelastic to avoid the AC collapse and also to maintain the AC well. Pre-place sutures over the scleral flap in case of immediate closure if it is required. And what are the surgical challenges we may face during the surgery in the angle closure attack eyes? Achieve the good IOP control before surgery so that we can avoid or we can prevent the complications like suprachoroidal hemorrhage. Discontinue any oral anticoagulants prior to the surgery to avoid hyphema and bleeding. Discontinue myotics and prostaglandins 1 week prior to the surgery, as they cause breakdown of the aqueous blood-brain so that we can prevent the other complications. And also dilate the patient prior to the surgery so that if any angle closure attack, further angle closure attack can be prevented. And if it is needed, if the AC is very shallow and all, we can do limited pars plana vitrectomy, which will help to prevent the attack as well. Also, it eases the surgical procedure. As we know, the eye pupils may be fixed and vertically oval, and very small pupils in some cases, like pseudoexfoliation in the advanced stages and iris hooks, pupil expanders and sphincterotomy can be done. And intraoperative AC shallowing should be avoided by decreasing the Berkeley height and also to reduce the flow rate. limited hydrodissection to be done to avoid the infusion misdirection syndrome. Some of the studies I want to discuss here. What procedure is good for the angle closure glaucomas? Coming to the Eagle study, the goal was to determine if the people with primary angle closure and high intraocular pressure are primary angle closure glaucoma without cataract. Is the early lens extraction is better, or laser iridotomy, or medical care, which is more effective to maintain the quality of life and also to reduce the IOP? The main outcomes, what they saw was the quality of life and the cost effectiveness and the effectiveness of the trabecular results and visual field loss. And they followed up the patients for 3 years. And they concluded, in context of primary angle closure with the IOP more than 30 millimeters of mercury, or angle closure glaucoma with IOP more than 21, if there is a little significant cataract, the early lens extraction offers better results and better quality of life and better IOP reduction when compared to medications and the laser iridotomy. So what they concluded is the immediate lens extraction seems to be cost effective, particularly in the long term. In other study, Lam et al. Compared the effectiveness of iridotomy and the phacoemulsification and phaco with the trabeculectomy. As we discussed, iridotomy will be helpful in the early cases where not much of synovial closure. It will help to prevent the further progression of the disease and to prevent the pupillary block. But when the high IOP, then it is better to go for the phacoemulsification. It will help in controlling the pressures. But still, if the IOP is very high and the more than 3 angles of synovial closure, it is better to go for phacotrabeculectomy, which will help to reduce the additional IOP. But when compared to the only lens extraction, the trabeculectomy is definitely, it is associated with more complications. So this is the way we have to treat the angle closure glaucoma patients. Depends on the extent of the synovial closure, depends on the IOP, depends on the age, and associated other factors we need to treat in a different manner, whether iridotomy or only lens extraction are associated with the phacotrabeculectomy. This is the algorithm to follow to treat the angle closure glaucoma. These are some of the references. Thank you. So now coming to the discussion, if you are having any doubts, otherwise we will ask some questions so that one question for Dr. Vidya ma'am is that what is the advantage of UBM over the ASOCT in diagnosing angle closure, ma'am?
Yeah. So the UBM is a little more contact method, I can say, because here the patient has to lie down in a supine position. There is a cup which is placed with a water bath. So that can be a little uncomfortable to the patient. That is the only disadvantage of UBM, but otherwise it has more advantages than the ASOCT because of the greater depth of penetration. Here, apart from the angle structures, the iris and the anterior chamber depth, other factors, it is also possible to examine the structures behind the iris, especially the ciliary body. So the position of the ciliary body, the size of the ciliary body, because as Dr. Prachi was showing the different levels of angle closure, the ciliary body also has a large ciliary body or an anteriorly placed ciliary body. They play an important role in the pathogenesis of angle closure. So in such cases, UBM may be more helpful. But ASOCT, I think nowadays is more commonly available because of the OCT machines. Everyone has an OCT now. So ASOCT is more widely available, but we can use that also.
Yes, ma'am. And it is non-contact and maybe comfortable to the patients also.
It is more
Yeah.
non-contact.
Yeah. And one more advantage of UVM may be that in corneal opacities, maybe where like, keratoplastic cases and all. So AS positivity may not able to give the more details. So the UVM can penetrate better. So it will give the better instance. Okay. Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
So regarding iridotomy, Aarti, you are there? Yeah, anybody can answer. If laser PI, after doing laser PI, we will do gonioscopy. And if the angles are not open, how to go about it?
Dr. Aarti, would you be answering?
Yeah, anybody can answer. Ma'am, you can answer, or Prachi, Aarti. And
Yeah. So the laser iridotomy is the primary management, the primary procedure that has to be done in all the stages of angle closure. So as Kalyani madam was saying, it may open the angle in most of the cases, but there can be a few percentage of people where the angle may not open. So when after iridotomy, we do a gonioscopy and see that the angle is not opened. Then what should be done? So first we have to know why the angle has not opened. As Dr. Aarti was also saying in her talk, the appositional angle closure would open with the laser iridotomy because it is just an appositional closure. But if there are already a synechia that have formed that particular angle, those particular eyes may not open completely after a YAG laser PI. And also those eyes with a large lens and those with a large ciliary body, anteriorly directed ciliary body, or the lens which is large as well as little anteriorly placed in relation to the axial length. That means the eyeballs are small, but the lens is very large. That is one of the main pathogenesis in angle closure glaucoma. In such cases, also because of the large lens itself, the angle may not open. Large, I mean, thick iris, thick lens, and a thick ciliary body or ciliary process. So these are the most likely causes where the angle may not open after iridotomy. So in such cases, the ASOCT can also help us. Why the angle has not opened, whether the pathology is in the lens, is the pathology at the level of the ciliary body or the iris. So based on that, we can decide upon the further management.
and how to go about plateau iris, ma'am? Even in plateau iris, the angles may not open and
Yes.
IOP may not be.
For pathology where it may not open is the plateau iris, because here again it is because of the large anterior ciliary process, the ciliary process or the ciliary body which is large as well as anteriorly. Otherwise they should have been directed posteriorly, but if they are directed anteriorly they will bulge and still cause angle closure because of the large ciliary process. So in such cases, I think Dr. Prachi had shown an image of the angle plateau iris. So in these cases, a laser iridoplasty, argon laser iridoplasty may help to open the angle. It may help to constrict, and the iris can fall back and open the angle. And there is also a role of a chronic pilocarpine therapy in such patients, where chronic pilocarpine, especially given at night, can also help the angle to be, we can keep the angle open. But these patients definitely have to be followed up very regularly because they can further progress for chronic glaucoma.
Okay, ma'am. Yeah, so we have to see any plateau iris component is there, then we need to do the iridoplasty and further follow up.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. And other thing is like when you are doing iridotomy, if you are unable to like penetrate the iris, if you feel like it is very thick iris, and how to go about it? Many times we face it in the OPD, regular OPDs. Yeah.
Dr. Aarti, will you be taking this question? Okay, I can answer otherwise.
Yes, ma'am.
So yeah, so we definitely come across some situations where we are not able to penetrate the iris completely. So first and foremost is to have good meiosis in these patients. Of course, in acute cases, the corneal edema has to be controlled, cornea has to be cleared by lowering the intraocular pressure. But even in other cases, like the chronic cases and the glaucoma suspects, the angle closure suspects, it is important to put good pilocarpine before the procedure, so that the iris is stretched. The pupil is fully constricted and the iris is stretched. And also, it's a good procedure to identify thin areas or crypts to do the iridotomy, because those are easier to penetrate. But sometimes it may not be possible to have thinner areas. In such cases, of course, we can increase the energy a little bit and try to penetrate the iris, because it has to be of sufficient size to remain patent. But sometimes it may not be possible to penetrate the iris completely in the first procedure. So these patients can be reviewed again after few days, 5 to 7 days, and maybe once that particular area is it becomes a kind of atrophic, and in that area we can try a PI again. So that could be one procedure. Otherwise, we can still try to find another site where we can do a PI and can make it patent. If all these procedures fail and still we are not able to penetrate, and if the patient is very much in need of an iridotomy, we can even take up for the surgical iridectomy. But usually it's reserved for very rare cases. We don't have to do it that much. But in case somewhere the laser is not available, or sometimes the laser is not possible to penetrate, those cases surgical iridectomy can be tried. Otherwise, we can just continue and step up the medical management and follow the patient more carefully, and if needed, do some surgical intervention like cataract extraction.
Yeah. So another is like, ma'am, argon laser we can use initially to like little bit
Burns
to thin the, yeah.
give some
With a few laser shots, we can thin the iris, then we can go for the this thing. That also can be another option, ma'am. But many of the times we may not get the argon laser, like in some places. So that time, like maybe 2 steps we can, as you said, we can do
have an argon laser that can be tried. Yeah.
Yes. What about in corneal edema and maybe arcus is very like thick arcus and all? Such cases, how to go about it?
Yeah. So again, ideally the peripheral iridotomy should be as peripheral as possible, more towards the limbus, because if we come more centrally, there are chances of diplopia and chances of damaging the lens. So ideally we should try to do it more peripherally. But if it's a thick arcus or sometimes vascularized cornea in the periphery, so in those cases maybe we can try a little mid peripheral iris. But especially if in those situations we can choose the upper quadrants, because that will be covered by the lid. So then the chances of diplopia may be less. So I think we can try that.
Yes, ma'am. Aarti, any this thing, Prachi, you are having any doubts regarding our talk and madam's talk, or any discussion about that?
Ma'am, everything was very well covered, ma'am. Like, the topics were very well discussed and very helpful for our clinical practice and day-to-day practice, where there are doubts like when should we repeat a PI, or when should we plan a surgical extraction or a phaco trap. I think the discussion was quite informative, and it will really help everybody in our day-to-day practice. Thank you very much.
Madam, I have one point to make. What Dr. Kalyani Madam discussed about the surgical management is mainly for the primary angle closure. So that is, the algorithm to be followed for primary angle closure. But for secondary angle closures, like the examples that Dr. Prachi had shown, so the respective pathology has to be treated. There, if there is some other cause which is causing the angle closure, those are procedures, or those particular etiologies have to be treated, like phacomorphic glaucoma or sometimes subluxated lens that are causing secondary angle closure. The management can be slightly different.
Even in
Madam
phacomorphic,
has elaborated very clearly, very nicely.
yes. So in the phacomorphic also, first we have to do this PI, ma'am, and PI, and after that gonioscopy. After, even if it is long-standing phacomorphic, then there is a chance that PAS formation will be there because of the shallow AC. Iridocorneal touch is more. So then those cases maybe depends on the gonioscopy when the cornea is clear. Mostly they come with the corneal edema and all. When the corneal edema is reduced with the medical management, then we can do gonio. If the synovial closure is there, we can go for the phaco trap or the SSCS trap, whatever it may be. Mostly because shallow AC is so better to go for SSCS trap, or otherwise with high risk and all, we can go for the phaco if we can able to manage. So it depends on the cynical, how many cynic are formed and how much. If it is only simple appositional, if it is causing more glaucoma, then we can go for only lens extraction. If it is not very long standing, then it will be better. Otherwise, we can go for the phaco trap. So it will be like maybe managed by gonioscopy or ASOCT or UBM, whatever, and see the angle, how it is, whether it is only oppositional or cynical, then accordingly we can manage. Yes, ma'am. And any other things, ma'am? So
Very nicely covered all the topics, all the issues related to angle closure glaucoma.
yes, ma'am. So with this, ma'am, we will close. I thank all the participants and as well as the speakers, Dr. Vidya ma'am, Dr. Prachi, Dr. Arati, and for your time and also for a nice talks with so much of elaboration. You have explained everything, and also later for the practical points, the discussion, it was very nice. I have learned much from all of your talks. Thank you once again, ma'am. Once again, I thank you, the organizers, for giving us this opportunity to have the IC on the angle closure glaucoma. So with this, we will close, ma'am. Thank you.